Okay, let's get started. We've got lots to cover this morning. I'm delighted to welcome you to this discussion on the future of social investment post-Covid-19. This is going to be hosted by CIP, the Community Impact Partnership, and Supply Change. So my name is Jules. I'm the Investment Manager for the Community Impact Partnership, and I'm co-hosting today with Beth and Isha from Supply Change. So we've organised today as a chance to hear from different perspectives on the challenges and the opportunities for social enterprises both now and in the longer term, and to spark a conversation about what needs to be done to support social enterprises. We are really pleased that we're joined by so many different people from different backgrounds with an interest and a role in social enterprise. We've got representatives from housing, local government, social investment, funders, social enterprise, and suppliers. And so, you know, it's great that everyone's able to join us today, and we're looking forward to having a really productive and interesting conversation. Before we go any further, I just wanted to check if you're all familiar with some of the functions of Zoom. So please, can you try and keep your microphone on mute unless you're speaking, just so that we can keep background noise to a minimum. And we'll also have time for some questions, so you will have an opportunity to ask any questions if you have them. There's two ways that we would ask you to raise your questions. You can either raise your hand, and we'll keep an eye on the participant list so that we can see you and come to you when we have an opportunity. And you can also use the chat box. So please do make a note of any questions that you want to ask in there. And also, if you'd like to share any links or any information that you think would be helpful to aid the discussion or that people may find useful in the future, please do use those. We're also recording the session today, so we will share the recording afterwards, and we will also be keeping track of the conversation, making notes, and we will provide a summary of key points and anything that is useful for people who you may want to follow up on afterwards. So I'm going to hand over now to Isha, who's going to walk us through the agenda for today and tell us a little bit about how it's going to work.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jules. So yeah, just to take you through how this morning will run, after hearing from our hosts, we're going to kick off with a panel discussion chaired by Rachel Woolliscroft from Baynel Ltd. She's also joined by Sam Scharf, Director of Community Investment at Orbit Housing, Lucy Findlay, founder of Social Enterprise Mark, and Robbie Davison, founder of Can Cook. After the panel, we'll have a few minutes for questions before breaking out into smaller discussion groups for about 15 minutes. We'll then come back together and discuss any learnings and key take-homes with the panel before wrapping up. Thanks.
Unmute myself there. So thanks, Isha. Before we move to our panel discussion, we're just going to give you a very brief introduction of your host today. So I'm just going to start with the Community Impact Partnership. So we're a partnership of 4 housing associations, that's Clarion, L&Q, Orbit and Peabody. We launched in 2018, and we're a social investment provider. So we offer social investment alongside the community investment activities of the 4 partners. We have a £3 million fund, which is our first fund, offering unsecured loans and grant funding of between 25,000 and 150,000. You can find out more information about us and what we offer on our website, but also we're more than happy to have a conversation if it's something that you're considering for your organisation, and how you might be able to work with us. So please do get in touch if you'd like to. Beth, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Jules. Hi, I'm Beth, one of the co-founders of Supply Change. We were founded in 2018 to connect social enterprise suppliers to public and private sector organisations looking for goods and services. We do this through a platform of pre-vetted social enterprise and our consultancy services. Some of our clients include Orbit Housing and Camden Council. Since COVID-19 hit, we've been working on solutions to ensure that we can still support both social enterprises and buyer partners during this time. So far, we have created an open source directory of social enterprises and community organisations in partnership with the Social Value Exchange. This is a list of social enterprises still delivering services during this time and community organisations looking for financial or non-financial support. You can access this directory via our website, supplychange.co.uk. And if you want to sign up to be on the directory, there is a link there too. With Jake Slater, we've also co-created a continuity planning document for charities and social businesses, which includes information on funding, government support, and links to other webinars, which you can also access via our homepage. And we'll share these slides with you afterwards in case you need to refer to them. But now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Rachel Woolliscroft to chair our panel discussion and introduce our panelists.
Thanks, Beth, and hi everyone. As Beth said, I'm co-founder and director of a niche sustainability consultancy which works with businesses to develop and integrate sustainability strategies. We also work with a range of social enterprises. I think from my career, I've been passionate about how through procurement we can have greater impact. In my previous role, I set an ambitious target in 2015 to spend 20 million with the social enterprise sector by 2020, developed a clear strategy which was integrated through our group procurement processes, and the business achieved that target 1 year ahead of schedule. I also sit on the VCSE advisory group for Cabinet Office, exploring how through central government procurement more contracts can be delivered by the VCSE sector, and also a member of the advisory panel to Supply Change. So I'm delighted to have Sam, Lucy and Robbie on the panel today, and I'm going to ask them to each introduce themselves and also give their perspective on one positive and one negative that they think has arisen from the COVID crisis for social enterprises. So we're going to kick off with Sam. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you very much. Morning, everybody. My name's Sam Scharf. I oversee the Community Investment Programme at Orbit, as well as I'm a director on CIP. So one positive, and I guess it does come from a place, I think, of unfortunate amplification of what I guess we've seen inequalities over the past few months. But I do think that we are seeing an accelerated consumer consciousness for local, social and environmental impact. So I do think that the environment coming out of this could be very positive for social enterprise. The negative, I think it is still a bit too early to tell how deep the recession is going to be. And I work within a large social enterprise, but I guess we're a large business, and I guess I'm unclear at the moment how that is going to impact our spend and our buying teams' behaviours. So those are my two.
Thank you. And Lucy, over to you.
Hi, hello everybody, really pleased to be here. I'm Lucy Findlay, I'm from the Social Enterprise Mark. We are a social enterprise ourselves, and we accredit other social enterprise based on their social enterprise credentials and the social value that they create. Positives, which I'll touch on a bit in my later talk, is like how unusual alliances and alliances that perhaps wouldn't have happened are happening over this period of crisis. I think that has been my experience in the social enterprise sector, and it's created a lot more flexibility, I think, in the ways that we are working. On the negative side, I think it's a little bit similar to what Sam was saying about how we're not quite sure what the implications are going to be. We know that some social enterprises are definitely finding things hard, and post-furlough scheme, we really don't know. I mean, at the minute, we think that, there hasn't been quite as many social enterprises disappearing off the scene as perhaps we thought, but there may be a delayed reaction with the removal of some of the government support.
Okay, great. And Robbie, over to you.
Morning everybody, wherever you are. Robbie Davison. I am the director founder of Can Cook, and Can Cook operates, let's do it. Can Cook operates in England, and we have another company called Well Fed that operates in Wales, North Wales. The positives, that so many social enterprises have been able to respond to the need that is kind of transpired during the COVID crisis. That's been a big positive. And that others have been able to pivot their model to respond as well, which again shows that the sector has some relevance, but it's also got some skill in being able to negotiate what's coming at them. The negative, after 35, 40 years of social enterprise development in the UK, that the government still doesn't find us relevant. And that says something about the strength and depth of the sector itself. So that's my plus and minus to say hello.
Great. So, I mean, some key themes emerging there around the sector's ability to respond and pivot, which has been a really great positive. Some, you know, the change of consumer behaviours, but also the potential around future behaviours of buyers and how, you know, recession may impact on the behaviours of people. And also the wider implication of the recession and how that's going to impact the sector. And I suppose, you know, the whole relevance of social enterprise, and that's something we're going to pick up now on the discussions with the panel. So Sam, I'm going to come to you first. And as a housing association who's firmly put social procurement at the heart of your buying decisions, I'm keen to understand how you think businesses such as yours can inspire and engage other businesses to develop and embed a social procurement strategy. And what do you think are the key steps to enable this shift in thinking from kind of to really put central at the heart of companies' buying decisions, social procurement?
Thanks, Rachel. I think I'll caveat this with you can make your own conclusion on whether this is inspirational or not. I haven't wrote any inspirational notes. What I have done is reflected on what is now 6 years at Orbit working on this, and there's 6 points that I would make. What I would say as an intro is that we have taken small steps, big steps. We've stopped, we've pivoted, we've tested, we've researched it. We have sort of done everything we possibly can, and it's still tricky. And I think sometimes when it's tricky, people seem to think it's not possible. And I think it's difficult because you feel like you're letting people down sometimes and you're setting expectations. So I think for those that are on this journey, I think that a recognition that it's going to take time. So the 6 things that I reflected on that I think we've probably learned. This is broader than social value commitments. I think if you put this in that same bracket that often has apprenticeships and work placements and you know, waiting in your contracts, it won't land. You might get one social enterprise, but it's not going to be part of the ecosystem. So this is much more about getting the confidence and the energy within your procurement team to really enable this to feel like it's part of their day job. And I'm very fortunate at Orbit that we have that, but you know, it has taken time. Point 2, you've got to work with the procurement grain. I think too often, and I'll put, you know, these are reflections where we've got it wrong, right? Like we've sort of tried to come in from the side and make a strong case, and especially in housing or public sector procurement, we should be doing this naturally, but it's not always the case. So working with the grain, you know, what are they nervous about? You know, they're nervous about risk, finance, compliance. That's their day job. And if you don't address those things, if you just think that everyone should just do it because it's a good thing to do, it just, frankly, doesn't work. So breaking perception, making sure social enterprises are pre-due diligence, and that's a plug for the work that Supply Change do. And you've got to make sure you manage the risks of those supply, the social enterprises. One of the biggest things, and recognition really, even this just 1 year, this is the last year of 6, is procurement might hold the strategy. So you've talked about, Rachel, in the question about procurement strategy. but actually they don't have the power and they don't manage the timescales. It's the contract managers in the businesses that do that. And that's where you need to focus your time and energy. And you then just need to jump through the procurement hoops if we're talking from a social enterprise perspective. But it really is, it's about reaching out and working through the contract managers. Do your research and recognise where social enterprises are able to deliver. You know, just getting them to just deliver through the whole supply chain, through ODU, etc. Just not realistic. It's not realistic for big procurement teams. It's not realistic for social enterprises. A point that our procurement team have shown us, you can do this proactively. You can lock contracts. There are no procurement rules that prevent us working with social enterprises and reaching out to social enterprises and putting them in our supply chain. They don't have to always compete. And, you know, too often we see procurement as the blockers to this. And frankly, when you've got a good procurement team, they'll show you the ways through. And my final point here is just making it happen. It's worked for us once we got some social enterprises into our supply chain. That has gone from 1 or 2 to now I think we must have 15 to 20 on our supply chain. First of all, we onboarded them, we put them on our supplier list, we made them easy to use, and then we started reaching out to our contract managers. And we started with small spend and then grown from there. And it's an easy thing to say that seeing is believing, right? But it's true. Once people in the business see the impact these social enterprises are making, and the way, Robbie, you've just talked about it, that they pivot and they're able to really flex to your needs, it starts becoming a bit of a no-brainer. But that's 6 years condensed into 6 minutes and 6 points. It's not always that straightforward. You do have to be prepared to sweat.
Thanks very much. And a lot of the points that you've talked about, I would echo from my experience as well, around the leadership commitment, making it easy, and that engagement and working alongside procurement. And that's very much what, you know, enabled me in my previous role to very much achieve what we did achieve. And I think the other thing about, you know, supply change is a great opportunity as well, with the platform that it provides these days to actually find the social enterprises. Because when going back, you know, that finding is often one of a really big challenge for a lot of suppliers who are looking to engage with the sector. So yeah, thanks, and some great points. Lucy, you did a blog in April. You talked very much about how the sector needs to work across political parties, get greater media on board, and also work outside the boundaries of the UK to shift the thinking around the sector. How do you suggest the sector begins this journey to ensure we do build back better and that social enterprise are at the heart of the economic recovery?
Hi, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, it's a biggie, really, and one of the most encouraging things I think that has come out of this crisis is the ability that the new ways of working have led to maybe some unusual alliances, and alliances that perhaps we hadn't really thought about before we had the driver of the crisis. So immediately the crisis happened, we as the social enterprise kind of leaders sector got together, and we started doing some campaigning around Save Our Social Enterprise. Probably quite a lot of you have been aware of that work that's gone. But one of the things that we were very keen to do was for it not to be just seen as put some money into the social enterprise sector. The social enterprises are the glue that holds society together, along with some of the other of the voluntary and community sector. And without social enterprises, we are not going to be able to build an economy that is sustainable for the long term. So I really think that we need to be seen much more in the context of a much wider debate, and start reaching out to some allies that perhaps we haven't been speaking to as much. And one of the examples of this that I had found was that I had been talking to Barclays about the social enterprises were having in accessing the loans that are available. And I know Robbie will talk a bit about some of the challenges of access to finance, and obviously we have our specialist financial institutions as well. But as a result of this, I made an alliance with someone who I'd talked to before, and we have now come to the conclusion, and it's the crisis that sort of catalysed this, that we needed to use the example of how you know, one person in an institution could start to influence things better for social enterprises by creating a central point of contact, and use that to try and get some leverage with other of the mainstream banks. And wouldn't that be amazing if finally we actually had some linkages and some people who knew what they were, you know, actually knew what social enterprises were doing on the ground and could understand why social enterprises were doing what they do. So we've started a journey, and we've reached out to the corporate sector to start that journey, and let's see what happens. So that's been something that I think has been a concrete example of how we can work together with other allies. Other alliances have materialized, which have been around, but I think have come together as a result of the crisis. So, for instance, the Build Back Better campaign, we need to start to all be talking, and you'll see that the hashtags for this work are, you know, how do we collectivize, start this discussion in a wider way? We've got tools, we've got social media, we've got LinkedIn. We all need to be trying to push in this direction. But the Wellbeing Economy Alliance is one organisation that we came across that is an international alliance of all different countries, mainly grassroots organisations that are pushing to say that the economy should be about people, not about financial institutions and shareholder gain. And we need to change that dialogue. So they actually have 10 principles. I'd encourage you to have a look at their website, but the ones that are probably most pertinent to social enterprises are the creation of new goals. So investing in businesses that have social enterprise have social justice and you know, good ethics at their heart. And divesting from those that just have a pure economic wealth creation driver. Investing in green infrastructure, and working with wellbeing economy organisations, that includes ourselves, to make them more of a priority, and to work more in cooperation. And some governments, for instance, Iceland, Scotland and New Zealand, have already started on this journey by having a wellbeing economy government group. The challenges I think we've got, certainly in England, is that our government obviously is not in this place at the moment. So we need to try and find allies that will listen, that will have the ear of those organisations. So we need to start to reach out more to the mainstream business community, to those that do have the ear, to start to influence from that perspective. And I think one thing that I've found is that LinkedIn has been a very useful way of doing that. And I don't think that people use LinkedIn perhaps as much as they should do, because it is the #1 business portal. And if you can start to link in with you know, like-minded allies, you can place blogs, you can place thought pieces, become thought leaders in your own right, and that will then sort of start to spread the message sort of surreptitiously, if you like. And I've found that progressively that has been quite a useful way of just starting to dip your toe in the water. So in terms of what I would like to see flowing forwards sort of 12 months from now, I would like to see an economy that is more focused on people. I don't think we will get, you know, the panacea by any means, but if we can just start to get a more people-focused understanding of economics, and that social enterprise is an understanding that social enterprise is part of that glue, and it's not just you know, kind of a fringe business activity. It is a mainstream business activity.
Thank you, Lucy, and some great points there around kind of alliances both at global, national and local level. And interestingly, on the chat, somebody's just talked about you know, the alliance that they've created with their local MP to try and drive greater engagement around this, around social enterprise. So some really practical and simple things that people can do both at a local level, but also recognition that we need to do more at a national and a global level. So Robbie, just recognising the social challenges we're in and the significant impact this is having on food poverty, and you know, you've also spoken previously about the misconceptions of the term social enterprise. In a time when government support has been mixed, with many social enterprises falling through the cracks of financial support due to their legal structures, what do you think is the one thing that we need to change to increase social enterprise awareness across both government, business and wider society, and shift this dial from kind of charity to being commercial businesses? I'm
going to sidestep the element of legal structures. That's a bit too dour and dry for today. I think the simple answer is that size and investment matters. I said in my opening hello that we remain insignificant to government. Lucy's just touched on it, and we've got a right-wing government, so we're going to really need to fight for any support we can get, and that will only happen when we become significant to the government and therefore significant to the economy. We've got to be honest, we're not there now, and the government reaction to the social enterprise sector as part of the COVID crisis tells us we're not there now. For my sins, I've been part of the social enterprise sector for over 30 years, and this debate about government recognition and where we're placed structurally within government, within local government and elsewhere, has been going on throughout those 30 years. And if I'm honest, very little has changed. And we have to take that on board. I think what's going to happen, the change that we want and we require will not be short term. We're going to lose loads of good social enterprises because COVID has caught us all out, caught everybody out, and how we respond to that is going to be massively important. But I think what happens next is in the sector's hands, and by the sector I mean social enterprises, social enterprise investors, umbrella bodies. If we return to the previous incarnation of social enterprise, let's just go back to what Lucy just said there. We need a people-first economy, and we need to make sure that we deliver that. But if we return to what previously happened for social enterprises pre-COVID, we're going to be scrapping for bits of finance, scrapping for bits of grant, and we'll grow a bit, we'll shrink a bit, we'll exist a bit, and then we'll likely be here in about 10 years' time discussing something quite similar. Am I delivering a hard message here? I'm looking at people's faces and I'm thinking, is this a bit hard? And if we do that, we'll never, ever, ever be significant. Let's overuse the word significant here because it does matter. And to be honest, if we don't become significant, we don't deserve the attention of government. And if we don't become significant, we'll remain little more than an adjunct of charity. And that's where the majority of the sector is right now, let's be honest. What we need to jump forward and to become something quite different, to become a people-first economy, what we need, and this is the money thing, we need good investment. And we need good investment to get good social enterprises started. And then we need big investment. And by big, I mean, let's start at 1 million and talk our way up to 2 and 3 million. Because by the way, this is how business grows. This is what business does to grow, to make itself relevant. If we do that, more of us, more social entrepreneurs, more social enterprises will break through that kind of corporate glass ceiling. In the 30 years I've been involved, like I said before, I've only seen a couple of social enterprises break through that ceiling. That tells a story in itself, and we need more to get through it. I think we don't back ourselves. I think we tend to, as part of the debate, accept small amounts of finance and grant that keeps us busy, but mostly small. And when it comes to negotiating with the government, we can often be seen to accepting some small moves forward just to keep us on the fringes of what's really important in the economy. The sector needs scale. My belief is that what holds the sector back is too often the sector itself waiting for government to give us permission. You know, let's hope, I do hope that COVID changes the sector and we develop more strategically and more importantly, commercially. Size matters, good investment matters, and only when they come together, I think, will we get a government willing to talk about us in the way that they talk about business. Just to add one little thing further, the economy should be about people, and we all should support that. There's a great deal of talent out there. I talked before about the ability of social enterprise to pivot, and the social enterprise world needs to get its investment and structural support right in order to protect and nurture and mature that talent. Only then will we become something significant, and only then will we not be having this conversation in about 10 years' time.
Thanks, Robbie, and some really honest views there around what we need to do in terms of building scale and significance and relevance, and having the right conversations with the right stakeholders. I'm going to just finish off now before we move into the breakout sessions. And I think, you know, COVID has presented an opportunity for us to reset as businesses, not just restart. And as we move forward, I think, you know, the UK and beyond is going to face some significant social and environmental challenges, and social enterprises are very well placed to respond and support these. I'm going to ask the panel for one word. So looking forward to 12 months from now, what would success look like for you from a social enterprise lens in one word? Sam, I'm going to come to you.
Crikey. One word.
Well, it can be a few more, but we're running out of time.
I'd like to see something within supply chains that you could genuinely call an ecosystem, a social enterprise ecosystem.
So, social enterprise ecosystem. Lucy?
People first.
People first. Great. And Robbie?
All hyphenated. Good, patient investment.
I thought yours would have been significant.
You know, said that enough.
Well, thanks ever so much, everyone. And we're going to kind of move over to Beth now, who's going to take maybe 1 or 2 questions before we move out into the breakout session. So thanks very much for the panel, and over to you, Beth.
Yes, thank you, Rachel, as well. And thank you, panelists. That was really interesting and some real food for thought. We've run over a bit, but I think that it was worth it to hear all those opinions. So I'm just going to actually take one question that popped up in the chat whilst we were talking, and one that I feel is important for us to address today, given the events of the last week. Louise Cannon from Unlimited said that she'd be interested in hearing the panel's views about, in response to what happened to George Floyd and continues to be a problem for us all in response to racism towards the Black community. How do you see that we should have an impact? How do you see that that will and should have an impact on how social enterprises tackle social justice issues post-COVID? I will come to Lucy first.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is an extremely important issue, and one of the sad things about this situation has been how it's highlighted that the lack of diversity that we're often seeing, and I notice it in social enterprises as well. You know, social enterprise leaders, often white, often male. We need far more diversity. If we don't have diversity in our organisations, then we will not be able to address properly the problems of our community. And if we don't drive diversity through our points of view, then we really won't understand what the issues are in our local community. So we need to ensure that we are listening properly and that there's proper representation of our communities on social enterprises, and that we are aware of, you know, how we're governed and how many people are actually represented in the governance, and the types of people that are represented in the governance of our organisations. And that's really been brought to the fore to me in the last few days' discussions. You know, it's just horrendous.
Thank you, Lucy. Really, really important points. I'm going to, I'm afraid, move on to our breakout group so we can ensure we have enough time to discuss as a group. So I'm just going to pass over to Isha now to explain how that's going to work.
Great, amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'm sure that has given everyone some food for thought. So we'd like to now go into our breakout rooms. We're going to go into 3 smaller groups for a more focused discussion, facilitated by myself, Beth and Jules. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the following. Your hopes and fears for the social enterprise sector post-COVID-19. What are the key actions we need to take away, and by whom, to either achieve these goals or avoid further challenges? After about 10 minutes, we'll then be asking someone from each breakout group for feedback or any kind of take-homes or key points made to share with the wider group. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to ask Jules to siphon us off into different groups.
Thanks, Isha, and thank you, panel. That was such an interesting discussion, and hopefully it will give everyone lots of food for thought for this next stage. So I'm now going to open all the rooms. You're randomly put into different rooms. So I'm just putting that forward now, and you should receive a little note pop up on your screen to say that I'm asking you to go into a different room. So Welcome back, everyone. There's a couple of people still coming back. I'm just waiting for one more room. Just give me a, hopefully they'll join us in a second. Great. Welcome back, everybody. So I hope you all found that discussion fruitful. We've got a few minutes left before we wrap up, so I'm going to move us straight on to some feedback on how you found those sessions. So Beth, could I come to you first, please? Could you give us a couple of points that you found really interesting or inspiring from your conversation?
Yeah, so you had a mixture of people in my breakout group, social entrepreneurs, people working for councils. The discussion really moved around how do we build long-term partnerships and collaboration between social enterprises and those that they're working with, particularly if social enterprises are working with local councils. Sometimes organisations or councils tend to engage on a one-off basis, give access to funding, and then perhaps don't continue that relationship. But what we talked about is that social enterprises now more than ever need that long-term investment and that long-term partnership to grow with them and to collaborate with them and share resources and not just kind of engage on a one-off basis. And we also talked about the fact that you need to find your believers in those organisations. As Robbie said, there are good people out there doing good work who will believe in you and invest in you, but unfortunately sometimes that can take a long time to find who those people are.
Thank you, Beth. That's really interesting. And just to say, we'll make a note of these, everything that was discussed as much as we could. So, and we'll share that with everyone. Isha, could I come to you next?
Yeah, definitely. We had a very quick discussion and I hope that I can capture the main points of what people said. The first point was around the legislation of procurement and making social enterprises become a really central and meaningful part of supply chains. And I think in Wales they had legislation that enabled that, and then perhaps maybe having that here might help in England. Also about the social investment space. Making it a mix of finances, but at the right time, someone from Comic Relief, and the real problem about the dominance of debt finance, and not a lot of social enterprises can commit to taking that on, and to be a bit more flexible, a bit more creative in the social investment space about working with different types of financing, so things like revenue sharing or other forms, and really being understanding about the wraparound support that might come with the grant funding, connecting people together with other help that they can get. And finally, there was words from ESTAT, which is an ethical stationery company, and they have been working with Orbit, and I think they really proclaimed how amazing it's been to work with Orbit. Really understanding, there's been a lot of understanding from their procurement team about the supplier. They've been really easy to work with, talking and really understanding, really good line of communication between them. So that's something that can really help moving forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Isha, that's great. And finally, Sam, could I come to you if you could just give us a couple of reflections from your group?
Yeah, very quickly. First reflection was most of my group, I think, wanted to be in Robbie's group and talk about food poverty, which is I like being in Robbie's group too. So there was some discussion about food and particularly around making sure that given the pressures at the moment that we find models within the social enterprise sector that allow empowerment of people for communities around this rather than being passive recipients. Couple of pieces around, I think, sort of business discipline within the sector. A lot of, when you're growing, you rely on volunteers. That's great, but actually how to make it sustainable, that's not really where we're at. And bringing some really critical business disciplines in is important. And then reflection on some of the stuff that we want to continue. Fundraising seems, and grant funds and other fundraising seems to have really been made easy over this period of time. You know, less hurdles, quick decision making, money out the door. That's really enabled people to react quickly, and that has to continue. We have to have a much more flexible fundraising, that's investment and grant environment going into the future. And the last point was, we've got to keep pushing that we cover our core costs. Like, we can't, we are delivery, we're a delivery sector. We want to deliver impact, but we've got to focus, we've got to be really disciplined about covering our core costs.
Thank you, Sam. So some really insightful and interesting reflections there. I'm just going to wrap us out. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much to all of our panel members for joining us. So Rachel, Sam, Robbie and Lucy. It's been great to have your input, and I hope everyone has found it helpful and insightful, and you know, and also the breakout groups. I hope everyone felt they had an opportunity to contribute, and we really organised today as an opportunity to take the temperature of how people are feeling, and you know, we're keen to organise other events in the future. So if you have any feedback or if you have any ideas you'd like to share, please do get in touch. We are planning to have a Meet the Buyer networking event in the next couple of weeks, so we will keep an eye on our social media, and we will certainly share details of that as soon as possible. We're just finalising a few of those details now. And that's it from us. We're just about on time. I know at least one of our panel members has got to dash off for another meeting, so thank you everybody for taking the time to join us. And we will follow up and share these slides and the recording with everyone in the next day or so. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good everyone. Bye.
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 See you, folks.
Thank you,
everyone.
Robbie. Cheers.